Hi, this is Gayle with BERNINA of Naperville, and happy fat quarter of the month for July. And what rhymes with July? Pie. And what do you think of when I say pie? I know, the circumference of a circle, me too. But do you think of anything else when I say pie? Like cherry, apple, banana cream, chocolate, shepherd's pie? That's what I thought. So here's the deal. Pi, the circumference of a circle, and pie, the thing with a crust that we eat, have fused together this month because it is all about circles and pie, and we are using the More Pie collection from Dana Willard for Figo Fabrics. So this fat quarter of the month is just gonna make you hungry the entire time and have you drooling for more pie, please. So we're gonna use some new tools, we're gonna do all the fun things, we're even using the BERNINA Circular Embroidery Attachment and a double needle. So if you're game for this, just make me stop talking and let's get started with this project. All right, so let's use our cool new thing that I've just discovered. This is actually a circle cutting tool from Fiskars, and it's gonna cut semicircles and full circles and even quarter circles. And you get this tray, and this tray has little grippy bits on the bottom of it, and it goes on your cutting board or your cutting mat like this. And then the cutter has a protective cover on it and a little rotating rotary cutter in there. And so the idea then is you pick what size of the circle that you want to make, and that's the diameter. Then what you're going to do is you're going to line your piece up, and just so you can see what I'm working with here is this is a 9-inch square of one of our fabrics, one of my favorite fabrics from this pack, and I have fused heat and bond light onto the back of this, and I've left the paper on so I can get a nice crisp edge when I fold it in half. So I want to cut an 8-inch circle. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to lift up my tray and line this up, and on our tray there is a mark where you put your fabric if it's folded, and a mark if you put your fabric if you're going to cut just a semicircle. And then of course if we were going to cut a quarter circle, we would put this on the line here, but we're going to cut a half circle. So I have everything lined up here, and I want to make sure that I'm lining it up so I'm trimming right on this 8-inch line. Now, one more thing to keep in mind here is that this is also taking into account that the circle has a 1/4 inch seam allowance. So let's remember that. And now we are at 8 inches. And then when you put this in, you'll see that there are little grooves right here. That represents where the blade is. So you want to make sure that those slip in and follow your line before you push down, because when you push down, then the blade is exposed. And so now I have a circle. Now that you're mesmerized by this circle cutting, we're gonna cut the other 3 fabrics here into a full circle that ultimately is measuring 8.5, but remember we're using the 8-inch line on here because it includes seam allowances. So we're gonna go ahead and cut these other 4 pieces, and then we're gonna dice them up into pie shapes. I'd say the most important thing is to take your circle, fold it in half again, then line up those 1/2-inch pieces, or that piece where it's folded, and then fold it again. You have a 1/4, then line up that little 90-degree V there, and then that will divide the side wedges, make a crease, and then redo that again on the other side. Now, some of you might not be able to see these fold lines very well, so that's why I grab a Sharpie marker and my ruler and make the lines so that they're a little bit bolder. You don't need to do this step, but it's helpful. And then once you have those that divided circle at the ready, then you're just going to use your straight edge and a rotary cutter to have your little wedges. So you're gonna take your two more backgroundy type pieces out of your kit and you're gonna cut them into 10.5-inch squares. You should get 2 from each fat quarter. And then you're gonna find the center, and the center would be 5 1/4 from the edge. And you're gonna make a line with your heat away pen or your water soluble pen. And this is gonna be a little bit faint. You might not be able to see this on the camera, but I just need a little registration point to start building the pie pieces. And so each pie is gonna get 7 pieces of pie. And the way this is gonna work is like this. We're gonna take a piece of pie and we're gonna peel the paper backing off of it. We're gonna put it into place, and I'm gonna have it just a little bit away from that edge. And I don't like to put 2 of the same pieces of pie next to each other. So we're just gonna pull these out just a little bit. So we're gonna have them about 1/4 of an inch from the center. That looks great, love it. And then we're gonna leave a piece missing just there. So it looks like somebody took a piece of your pie. All right, so I'm gonna carefully carry this over to the iron and fuse it together. Here's an example of what we're making. So as you can see, I haven't stitched down these wedges yet because it's all about adding our little pie crust rickrack. Now this was made with a twin needle, a 2.5 size twin needle, and the BERNINA Circular Embroidery Attachment, because it's all about the circles this month because a pie is a circle. Am I right? Okay, so now what you need to do is, once you get your wedges that you've dissected, cut apart, we are going to trim the sticky back stabilizer right flush with the edge so that has no chance of sticking to our presser foot. So I'm not even going to use a ruler for this. I'm just literally going to just use my rotary cutter and make a little cut to get that sticky stuff off of my square. And if you don't get it all, you have to make sure you do. And so now all of that's done, and I have another piece that I'm going to trim, and then I'll meet you back at the machine. So now we're going to put in our dual needle. Now this is a 2.5 millimeter wide double needle, and just like any of our other needles, they go to the back here, just like that. And I'm going to tighten that in. And then I'm going to tell my machine that I have a 2.5 double millimeter needle in it. I'm also going to tell it that I'm using the 20D foot. And I also need to make sure that I've got my 9 millimeter plate selected. Now another thing, I don't need to tell my machine about this, but this is the BERNINA Circular Embroidery Attachment. So this is kind of a fun device, and since our pies are circular, I thought this would be a fun way to make sure that those little crust rickrack pieces that we're putting on the quilt would be evenly distributed around the quilt. So what we're gonna do is put our piece on, and don't worry about this. This is going to be the radius that you adjust of the pie. I'm just going to leave that into that position right now, and I'm just going to screw this on into position. The circular embroidery attachment comes with 2 screws that go right in that little hole and your screwdriver. Now I squeeze my screw in that little piece just so I can make sure that I know where to find it, because I tend to lose these guys, so I keep them in the end of my screwdriver. I know that might be a little bit weird, but you know. So now I'm gonna tighten this down just like that, and I'm gonna just hang out for a second while I thread the machine. The first thing that you want to do is take one of your threads. You can see here I'm using two different colors. These are both isocord, and this is isocord number 1220 and isocord number 1334. I'm going to take the lighter orange one and floss my machine just like this. Then I'm going to carry it over here and I'm going to put it behind that little metal piece that's right here. Then I'm going to complete threading until I get down to the needle, and then I'm going to stop. Now I'm going to go over here to my darker kind of burnt orange, go through here, and this time as I get up here I go in front of that little silver piece and down. So now I bring them all down behind my little clip just like this, and the lighter orange is going to go through the right needle and the burnt orange is going to go through the left needle. So that's when we use our manual needle threader on our 880. So here's this piece. And basically what we want to do is put this through the needle where this guy has a little wire through it, and it goes through the needle and pushes thread through. So what you're doing is you're putting the needle threader through like this, then you're using that little lip that's in there to follow through and push through the eye of the needle, and that will thread it. And you just do the same for both needles. Okay, then finally, once you get everything threaded, it's important to press the manual threading button on your machine, then press your needle threading button. Now the needle threader is not going to actually thread, but by pressing this button it wiggles everything into place behind your thread take up so you can start stitching. All right, so if you're using a machine like our 475 here, you want to make sure that you raise your presser foot like this, and then you go behind the first thread guide, down through the tension discs, under the thread guide cover, then to the right and down the left of the thread take up, and then behind that piece number 5, and then there's another one right back there. And then if we had a double needle in here, one thread would go through one needle and one thread would go through the other. Now, one thing to keep in mind is a 475 is a 5mm machine, which means the stitches are 5mm, like on this little tulip. But when you do the double needle stitch like we did on our pie crust, it's going to look like this. If you want this kind of stitching, you're going to have to do this stitch on a 480 or 570 or any of the machines that do the 9mm wide stitch capability. So we're ready to put our old pie on the circular embroidery attachment. So I'm going to take off this little rubber protector for that point, and we're going to put the point right in the center of our pie wedges. And it's just going to work like a compass. So now I'm just going to spin this around and make sure that it's going to line up where I want it. So I do want to slide my circular embroidery attachment one notch closer and see how I like that. Get a nice little pie crust. You know, I'm kind of between notches. I think I like it over a little bit further, so I'm going to move it back a little bit away from the edge there. There we go. Okay, so this is how I like it. So now to protect my own hand there, I'm going to put this back on into position. Don't put it on too tightly because you still want it to spin. And now I'm going to just start stitching. Now I've selected stitch 402, and I have selected my double needle and everything like I already said, but now you'll notice on your screen that your double needles show up there right on the screen with this stitch. And I'm not going to change anything about the width or the length. I'm just going to stitch this out. Once you get everything into place, you just want to put the little rubber cover on that tip, or else you'll impale yourself. Ask me how I know. Okay, so, and then I've lined it up so as it spins around, it's kind of, you know, going around my pie in crust-like fashion. All right, so, you know what, Gayle, stop talking and just sew something, will you? Okay. Now you can see how this is like a compass and it's spinning around my pie. Now I didn't measure anything. All I did was just slide the circular embroidery attachment piece here until it was the distance away that I wanted around my little pie wedges. So sometimes the little guys do not line up like your wildest dreams hope for. So if that really bothers you, you could always see how I've left a missing wedge. You could always just start it here and then end it there. But I like to just trim here like this, and then I'm just gonna trim these bits out of there, and it's gonna look a little bit more connected. But however you want to finish that, it'll be fine, because that's what you choose and that's the right decision. So I am going to trim mine off just there, take it off of my circular embroidery attachment, and then I have one more left to do. All right, so here is my little pie piece. And I'm putting this on the little pointy piece of our circular embroidery attachment. And you can see you slide it this way, you slide it that way, and I'm gonna put this on the center where all of my little wedges meet. And then I'm gonna take it for a spin just to see if that's where I want it. Now, if you look here, I'm stitching into my wedges and I don't really want that. So that means that I need to move this piece like one notch away. And now that looks a little bit better for me. Okay, awesome. Now, another thing that you can do is, if you are afraid of having this situation happen to you where it didn't quite line up right here, you can just start it at your missing pie and end it at your missing pie. I just am more of a let me leave the crust kind of girl on the plate, okay? So however you want to do it, but I am going to start right at that pie edge. And now one of the things that you also want to be careful of when you're using your circular embroidery attachment is that you don't tug at it or push or whatever, because sometimes you can wiggle this radius, and if you do that, then you're going to get a spiral rather than a perfect circle. All right, so that one matched up a little bit better, so I'm happy with that. And now all 4 of the pies are complete with the pie crust. So now we're going to sew these 4 pieces together, layer them on our batting, only the batting, and then blanket stitch our pie pieces down. All right, I've put my standard sewing needle back in. I'm going to be using my King Tut variegated thread. We just got this in here at BERNINA of Naperville and I really love it. I'm going to keep my 20D foot on, and now I am going to do some applique. Okay, let's talk about our King Tut thread. So this is King Tut, and you can see the difference between how this thread is wound versus our Isacord. Isacord thread is cross wound. See the little X's on the thread? While King Tut is stacked. On the BERNINA 880, if you're curious as to how you deal with stacked thread, because remember, all of our spool pins are vertical, well, we put the thread on the back one because the back foam pad allows it to spin. Where these are stationary, this back piece here spins. And that's because it has like a spool cap or a foam pad that is capable of spinning around like that. So if I pop this little guy off there, you'll see on the bottom of that one, there is a plastic kind of thing that allows it to spin, while on the bottom of this one, it's just a foam pad. So once you go from there, you go to this little hole that is in this barrier, then you go up and down and thread. And then when that thread is pulled, your thread will spin, and that will make a difference with your stacked wound thread. So now I'm just going to pull my thread under my foot and pick my single blanket stitch. And my single blanket stitch is number 1329. And I'm going to adjust that stitch width to 3.5 and my stitch length to 3.5. And I'm moving my needle position all the way over to the right so that it'll butt up nicely against my presser foot just there. Here is my pie table runner, and now I just want to stitch around each pie wedge, and I've got about 8 of these, which is 4 pies, so there's 32 of these, so there's a lot of applique to be doing. And when I stitch, I'm going to line up my edge of my foot with the raw edge of my pie piece. And then I have my needle down engaged. I've got my number 20D foot on because that's awesome for doing decorative stitching through batting. But I did want you to notice that I'm only doing this through the batting. We're gonna put a backing on later. And so now I'm just gonna stitch. Now, when I get down to the middle of this point, I'm going to stop, use my knee lever, which is my freehand system, to go pivot and go into the corner of that pie piece. And now I'm going to stitch. Just like this. And now I'm going to pivot around. And go around my little wedge. And then I'm going to end my stitch. And you can see how cute that variegated thread stitched out there. Okay, so let's revisit getting to an ending point here. I'm going to use pattern end, and it's a hard button on the outside of my machine. And I have programmed it using my gears and going into the sewing settings to tack 4 stitches, cut, and lift the presser foot when it's done. So let's have a look here as I stitch around the corner. And now when I get here, I'm going to take one stitch, then I'm going to press my pattern end button, and now I'm going to stitch. And it makes a stitch and cuts for me. All right, you're going to take your pieces that you've appliqued, and they're all together. Then we're going to put our backing, and what I did here is I took those extra 10.5-inch squares that we cut and sewed those together. So this is going to be the back of our table runner. So all we're going to do is line everything up here, and you're going to pin or use your fabric clips along the way, and then we're going to leave a little opening for turning. So I have a little trick that I like when I know I need to stop at a certain area and then start again. I use a red clip where I'm going to stop and a green clip where I'm going to start. So another thing that we're going to do when we pin is we're going to put these seams together just like that and clip or pin. And don't forget that if you are doing this technique where you're going to stop at the red clip or pin, you can do a red topped pin there and a green topped pin there. But otherwise, we're just going to clip or pin around so that nothing shifts on you as you're stitching. And I like to stitch with the batting on the top side. But each time you get to an intersection, you're going to make sure that you line those seams up together. And once this is clipped, I'll meet you over at the sewing machine, and we're going to stitch our backing onto right sides together onto the quilt top. Okay, so just like I mentioned, I'm going to start at the green and I'm going to end at the red. So I've changed my foot to my number 97D, and I'm using a 1/4 inch seam with my straight stitch, and my straight stitch is at the default setting. So I'm going to go ahead and stitch. One of the things I like to do when I go on a corner like this is take one extra little diagonal stitch into the corner, then come down the side, and that will give me a pointier looking corner than if I would actually try to make a point. So I'm approaching my red clip, which I'm going to now take out, sew, reverse, and cut. And then I'm going to clip my corners and turn this inside out. All right, so once you've turned it inside out, you can see my cute little points there came out good. I'm just going to use the inside toe of my number 97D foot, and I'm going to just go around. I am going to elongate my straight stitch to 3.75 in length, and I'm just going to slowly go around this piece. You might have never seen me sew this slow before. all that's left is for you to bake a pie to go along with your cute pie runner. Now, of course, it's never too late to join the Bernina of Naperville Fat Quarter Club. It's easy. You just visit BERNINAofNaperville.com, and there you can search for Fat Quarter Club and you'll see it there. And what our Fat Quarter Club is, it is a monthly subscription, and you sign up and you cannot do it 1 month or do it 1 month and then the next month and then the next month and then stop. There's no obligation. However, you will receive an invoice from us once a month with the reminder to pay the invoice so you get the new Fat Quarter Pack. And this month, like I said, we're using the More Pie collection by Dana Willard for Figo Fabrics. And also, if you want to see more videos just like this one, don't forget to check out the Bernina of Naperville YouTube channel. It's easy. It's youtube.com/Bernina of Naperville, and there you can like, comment, and subscribe. All right, off to Jewel to get a pie because I do not bake. See ya.